Welcome to another edition of the eSpot with Camille. The eSpot is your location for the latest in entertainment, beauty, and design from the people who make it. Thanks for joining. An episode of the eSpot with Camille. Today is a very special fashionista edition, I should say, because we have the one, the only, the creator of Klassic Kloth. Oh my gosh, now I'm getting too many K's. Klassic Kloth. It's a lot. So just know it's only 2 Ks, not 3. So without any further ado, I mean, my name's Camille Cower and then Karrica Finch. Sorry. It's a lot of Ks.
A lot of Ks.
And you're in the South creating all these Ks. No, I'm kidding. I'm not giving you a hard time because these are one cloths you will be happy to wear. And the hoodies are doing all the things. So without further ado, Karrica, I'm so glad to finally meet you. I've been like obsessing of you online, and little did I know you were right here in the same county as me. Well,
right
during downtime, anyway.
During downtime,
whenever you have that. So tell us about your baby. How did Karrica? And I'm about to call it Karrica Kloth. Klassic Kloth become. How was it born? When did it start? How did your brainchild come about to design the latest in fashion? Tell us all about it.
Well, originally you would think that one would, especially with a name like Karrica, that I would have a namesake brand. But originally my brother and I were actually going to do a brother-sister collaboration kind of deal. So that's where we came up with Klassic Kloth. We came up with it together in June of 2020. And then he did pass away shortly after that. And so I kind of shelved the idea. And I've been in corporate design at that time for 13 years. So I had definitely paid my dues. And I'd taken a very long time before I started my brand for multiple reasons. And then about a year after he passed away, I was like, you know what am I waiting on? Like, life is really short. You never know what's going to happen. And I go online to look up all the information that we had started. Like we've got an LLC, we did all this stuff. And then I realized that it was originally supposed to be classickloth.com. And I couldn't remember the login to the domain name. So I had to make it classickloth.co. And yeah, I was like, this is weird.
Passwords get you every time.
The password gets you every time. So it was logged on his computer, which I had no access to. So then I don't know why I had a folder of it, but I had a whole folder of like the logo and the font. Like we had started all this stuff. I had forgotten that we'd even did any of that. And I was like, okay, so I got to just jump in head first. And voila, that was only... it was while I was on vacation in Mexico with a friend. And I was like, we were laying at the resort, Nizuc Resort and Spa. Anybody going to Cancun, it's phenomenal. It is the nicest place ever. And I'm laying there and I'm like, when I get home, I'm going to start my brand. And my friend's like, okay. And I was like, no, I'm serious. And then a month later, I launched. So
I love that. But it wasn't really an overnight success, though, because you had 12 years in the making.
I don't consider myself a success. Like,
why not?
I don't know.
Well, what is success for you?
Deep question. I think household name would be when you don't have to introduce yourself. To me, is when you've reached a level of success. To me, it's not a monetary thing, because if we wanted to go off of that, then I would consider myself successful. But it's more when you've bridged this gap of not having to introduce, like, I am this. People already, like, you don't have to say I'm Beyonce. She walks through the door and you already know the name.
I mean, if she walked in the door and somebody did have to ask her, I wonder what rock they're living under.
Right. It's not even a rock, it's a boulder.
Yeah, pretty much.
Under a boulder, a different planet.
Because I'm pretty sure even in the deepest of Amazon forest, they have heard of Beyonce running the world. Okay. So, like, since you're saying, like, for you, it's about not having to be introduced, people already knowing who you are. Tell me a little bit about the start of your career, even just how you got into the world of fashion. Because I think a lot of times people think of it as being too far away from them, like New York fashion from Raleigh to New York. Like, how did you make that bridge happen?
Well, I'm from New York originally, so fashion just innately in the New York scene is who you are. And when I was captive and brought down to North Carolina against my will, darling, the love of design never left me. Like, I mean, I am a New Yorker. True, there's nothing about me that is a Southern girl. I'm a good hostess. I think that might be a Southern quality, and I like shoes, which is very weird. As a footwear designer, I prefer to be barefoot, so that might be a Southern quality. But other than that, I'm a New Yorker all day, every day.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think when you love something so much and you're passionate about it, it doesn't physically matter where your body is placed. You will create that magic. So at a young age, my first sewing machine was like a little mini baby Singer. And I think I was like 6, 7, something along those lines. And my mom and my aunt taught me how to sew. They also, when I got a little bit older, taught me how to make flat patterns, which was the area where you don't think math is important, but it is the most important because it's all metrics on how to build a garment. And I just wanted to like create stuff. I really didn't care about like the details. And my aunt was like, no, you need to learn this because you cannot create that unless you understand the fundamentals. Yeah. And she was my favorite person on this planet Earth. She really was. She was an opera singer. And so I did a lot of Broadway when I was growing up. And so she was actually one of the only Black women at Juilliard for her master's program in opera. And yeah, she has a wonderful history and she was just very regimented. And so I wanted to be like this loose, over the top creative person. She's like, that's great, but we got to take it back. And we really have to go in like the ins and outs. So I really credit her a lot for making me as structured as I am on how to build patterns. And that has kind of catapulted into my career path, which I went to school for architecture and design. And then when I got out of school, it was 2009. So it's like we're still mid-market crash. Nobody's really buying houses, like, you know, and I didn't really want to work in architecture either. Like that wasn't really going to be my thing. That to me was like something I wanted to do on the side, but I knew I wanted to go into fashion. But when I went to school at NC State, there really was no fashion environment in North Carolina. So I'm like, I'll just do what I know is good here, and then I'll take it back to New York. And the second I got a chance, I got up out of here and I went right back to New York. Which is funny because growing up, people always said I spent more time in New York than I did in North Carolina. And I was like, I know, like any moment I got to escape, I did. And the reason why I loved the city so much is because of the vibrancy of everything that you see. You see the craziest things, the coolest things, and anything in between. And it's so inspiring. And when I got to the city, to make a long story short, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do as far as a career. Like, I don't know. Like, what do I do with this paper that I now have that says I graduated? Like, how do I translate that into an actual job? And it was very difficult to find a space to be in because everybody wanted you to have this insane portfolio and have, you know, all these years of experience. I'm like, but how is this an entry-level position needing 5 years of experience?
Right. Yeah.
Where does that make sense?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that the fashion industry is very, very competitive and very cutthroat.
Oh, we saw Devil Wears Prada. We know. Oh, no, we know. And we also saw America's Next Top Model. So we definitely know on both sides of the
What you didn't see in Devil Wears Prada is how difficult it was for somebody like Andy Sachs to get that job, because they basically handed it to her because the boss was so difficult. They just needed a body to fill that position. And there are a lot of those. I had a position like that once upon a time too. But as far as being a designer or being in production, research and development, those positions are very difficult to get, which is why you have somebody like Anna Wintour, who's 1,500 years old, because they literally have to expire before somebody else takes that role on. Like, people get those coveted positions and they're not letting go. They will stay until they're 93 and cannot have another breath in their body. So
we're now looking at term limits, not only in the Congress and Senate, but now in the fashion industry too. We need a union. We need a union to get our job.
Fashion union, we do.
The Model Alliance is working on it, I have heard, but not on the fashion side of things. But there should be one, because I think one thing that I love about your line is the sustainable proponent. Like, can you talk a little bit about that too? Why that was important for you? Because speaking of environment and government, that's something that a lot of fashion kind of gets I guess that's the negative side of fashion, is the
Right.
how quickly it is disposed of or not correctly disposed of, or even how we keep buying the newest, latest fashions. Where do the old fashions go, and so on. So speak a little bit about how you're changing that.
Well, fashion is the number two contributor to world pollution next to crude oil. And
Mm.
there are multiple reasons why. It's not just fast fashion, and that's a really big misconception. Now, fast fashion is a major contributor. I can't take that away. But when you are sewing a garment, as an example, there's about 2 inches of material that is the raw edge. It winds up getting cut off. Where does that 2 inches of material go? And it doesn't matter if it's fast fashion or if it's luxury brand, there's still that 2 inch of material that's left over, because that's what you have to feed through the machine. You need a seam allowance, extra amount of material off to the side to actually sew your seam. And it does not matter at what scale, there's still that extra material. When you go into an atelier, a couturier, they're going to have scraps left over, just
Yeah.
like they are in any other factory around the world. And it gets put into a pile and it gets thrown away. They don't care what happens to it. And we as a society, as a world, need to figure out a way to discard of that properly. There are methods that are being taken to take those scraps and then repurpose them. So in the leather world, we have this thing called bonded leather, which when I use vegan materials, I'm actually using bonded leather, which means they take all of those scraps that are unusable and they grind them down and then they remake them into an actual new leather sheet. It's considered vegan because they have like chemicals and stuff inside of it to bond it together. But it's called, not really vegan, it's called bonded leather. So it's scrap pieces of leather, but it's just not like a full on hide. And that's one small way. But what sparked my interest was I went into a factory. This was for another company that I was working for before I started Klassic Kloth. And I went into a factory and I saw hides and hides and hides of this beautiful leopard calf hair print. And I was like, that's so pretty. Why is it just sitting there? And I'm not going to say the brand name, but they're very luxury and they're very high end. But they said this was for them. And they decided that they didn't want it because they didn't like the print. And I was like, so what are you going to do with it? And they're like, we're going to throw it away. And I was like, okay, so I'll buy it. How much are you going to sell it for? And they're like, oh, like whatever you want to give us, basically. So I gave them a price. And I took all of that and I made these jackets out of it. And that kind of sparked my interest in how can I repurpose material, and the fact that there's so much material out there that's just like that, where you have a print that you wanted and it doesn't meet the standards of whatever your company is, and you can't re-dye it, so it gets tossed off to the side. And so I try to the best of my ability to use as much of that as possible. It's not as easy as it sounds, because you do have to spend a lot of time like globally sourcing these things. And of course, as the brand grows, I'm not 100% sure how feasible it will be to continue that. But maybe I could be the person that makes a change and have some sort of system set in play where these factories already know to reach out to me when they have this excess material, and I can.
No, that's what I was thinking. I was like, wait, they might be like, whoa, 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 call Karrica, she'll take it. You'll be like the Mikey of fashion world. Oh no, don't call Mikey, call Karrica.
I'm going to have to change my number.
For sure. Because I was just thinking, like, even here locally, there's a brand, because my husband, he works for UPS. And so he delivers to all these different companies. And he was telling me about a brand here locally that they're making textiles out of. Go ahead.
Is it a denim brand?
No, it's seaweed. They're making textiles out of seaweed or something he was telling me about.
So that is a really big thing, to use fruit and vegetable pulp. The problem is, sustainable wise, those things do degrade. They are going to disintegrate. And there's such a battle between using real leather versus these other materials. Real leather, like good quality leather. And listen, a cow is a cow is a cow. Can't change that. What makes good leather versus bad leather is the treatment process. So the reason why people say, oh, but this is Italian leather, it's the best. It's not that. It's the cow wasn't raised in Italy. The cow came from Morocco. Okay. It's the treatment that they did in Italy. They've got something special that they're doing that makes that material so butter soft. But the point being is that leather bag, there's a reason why an Hermes is worth what it's worth, because it is such high quality that you can pass it along for decades and it will still maintain its value, and it will still maintain its shape. It will still be a beautiful item. So to me, that actually is sustainable, because you're having an item that will keep going. Nothing happens to it. Now, of course, if you keep it locked in a cellar and it gets moldy, then that's a different story. But I would assume somebody having a Birkin wouldn't do that. But we live in a strange world. You never know.
We do.
So it's interesting because I always feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. I do use bonded leather. I use real leather. I use vegan leather. I use all types of material. I don't discriminate on my materials. But I try to salvage things the best way that I can. But I also know that real leather, it lasts forever. It really does.
I mean, there's a reason why I believe it's Coach makes Lexus's leather for their car seats, I believe. And so when they told me that, I was like, oh, well, they must get a really good deal on leather. I wonder if they kind of source it for other brands too. And I'm sure there's a way to do that, because like, so my background's more in the beauty world, and there was always like these, we call them then white labels, where you could purchase like it would be possibly the same formulation that another spa has, but it would have your label on it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times with the fashion world, we were talking about this a little bit over off camera a little bit with like some of these bigger brands where they're creating these items, and then you see maybe a Kate Spade version of it, and then a Michael Kors version of it, and then a Louis Vuitton, well, maybe not Louis Vuitton, but you see different versions.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, how can they get away with all of that?
Because they have one person that's private labeling it for them. So I did that a lot. I used to work at Halston. Like I said, footwear and handbags are predominantly my career. And when I worked at Halston, we private labeled with a company that we were doing 9 different brands. And with footwear in specific, you have something called a last, which is basically the mold of the shoe. So let's say you have a high heel. That mold for that high heel, if you look at 5 or 6 different high heels, although the upper portion of it might be different, the actual structure is exactly the same. So we're taking that mold and we're using it in multiple places. And believe me, we were using that same mold for the Halston brand, for the other brand, the other brand, and the other brand. We were just changing the upper so the shoe doesn't look the same, but the mold was this. It's basically like having 5 houses on the block that are in the inside exactly the same, but one looks brick, one is wood, one is stucco. The inside of the house is the same.
Welcome to my neighborhood. It's all the tiny boxes and cookie cutter. One of my favorite things to do is to look on Zillow when a neighbor's house is on sale. It's like, oh yeah, same window, same thing, just to see what they might have done differently. And
right,
yeah, we all have the same. We're still stuck with popcorn ceilings, whatever. Oh, no. It all happens. They're still selling, so it doesn't matter. Because I don't even want to think about how much stuff I would have to move to get rid of the ceilings, that it's like it's not worth it anymore. Yeah, because
they can scrape it. They don't actually have to, like, they have new methods now where they actually have this machine. It kind of looks like a vacuum, and it has a blade on it, and it scrapes and sucks it up at the same time.
Why are you? Again, she's a very expensive guest. But luckily, her items are on for sale at department store Belk.
Other people's money. That's my thing.
Well, I'll have to keep that in mind when I'm looking at figuring out who to get that done, because the contractors here are busy. Okay. And now I realize it's probably because of Love It Enlisted or the other show, Hillary Farrar. It's all done here. So who knew? So anywho, you spoke on something that really made it interesting, where they use the same model, but it's a different topper. There's these rumors about, even within the same brand, and maybe you could answer this as well, because you might find certain items at the department store, and then you go to the outlet mall and it's like half price, different, random, kind of different, maybe one arm's longer than the other, whatever. Something a little bit different. Is there really is a different brand that they send to the outlet and to the regular department store, or is it the same?
Those are 2 different teams that are designing things. You normally have somebody that's designing main label that's going into Belk, let's say. Then you have another team that only works off of TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and Ross. And so it's all within the same design house, but it's a different project. The quantities are going to be different. The locations are going to be different. The shipping process is going to be different. The labeling, everything is going to be different. It's a totally separate project. I used to, again, when I did private label, the main company that we were shipping to, believe it or not, was QVC. So we would ship
Mm.
the main lines to QVC, but then we also did something with Lord and Taylor that was totally separate. So we were still the same designers, but now we had to adjust the designs to be applicable for TJ Maxx. I mean,
Yeah.
I was about to say Tuesday morning, RIP. Um,
Wait, I was going to say, didn't Lord and Taylor close too?
Lord and Taylor got acquired by HBC, which is a Canadian company, and then they got the boot, which happens a lot in.
I'm still sad about Loman, so
Oh,
that was my
RIP
sport.
Loman. Barney's,
Mhm.
RIP.
Yeah.
Barney's deserved to
So now
close.
it's random. My daughter, don't judge me out there. I have a teenager. Fast fashion is her thing. Okay. I can't, as much as I would love to be able to afford her more expensive things, she likes the Forever 21 type places. So we went in there and there's a Barney's Forever 21 collaboration now. Like it's literally like, it's madness.
Well, they got acquired by Saks Fifth Avenue. So there's Barney's by Saks Fifth Avenue. And look, everybody has multiple teams that are designing different projects. So if they're doing a Barney's Forever 21 collaboration, most likely Forever 21 is leading the design. They're just using Barney's name, and they're probably getting a design directive of like how things are supposed to look, but they let the Forever 21 team take care of it. And so then going back to your original question, they are different designs and they're different materials because now you're dealing with a different price scale. I can't offer you the same thing. Like, do you remember when Versace did H&M and everybody was going crazy? It sold out within like 2 minutes. There were lines all around the block in New York. Like, I remember like walking past the line. I was like, not doing that because it's cold outside.
That part.
Not that serious. So if something happens to be on sale at a later date that's left over, I might grab it. But what is the point? Because it's not made at the same Versace factories. It's made in a completely different country. It's the same design team, like in the same house, but it's a different department. It might actually be the H&M design team for all we know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it is a different set of materials because they're dealing with a different price point. So I hope that answers the question.
Oh, it does, because I fell for that trap once. The good old Sergio Hudson and Target collaboration. Still, everything was gorgeous. I just finding the size was really hard to find the right sizing, and I love the pieces I
But
stayed
it's still
with.
his designs. Those are still his designs. It's just he's dealing, instead of using 100% silk, now he's got to use polyester because you can't
Or it's
offer
not lined. That was my biggest thing. Like some of the things weren't lined, and so it was like a little bit more
translucent.
I was gonna say a little more of my mistake areas were more visible. It was like a little more kind of cheesy, a little more texture.
You have to learn how to cut corners when you're shipping to big box retailers like a Target, because their quantities that they are going to want, it's going to be totally different than the quantities that you're shipping at Bergdorf Goodman. Bergdorf Goodman might take 100 units of that style, that color. Target's going to take 5,000.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So when you first were approached, or I don't know if you approached Belk or they approached you, what was that whole pitch like? Like for any new designer who might be interested in trying to get to that point? Because to some, you're the success point. Like getting into a department store is their success point. So how was that about?
So again, I have a decade and a half worth of experience shipping to these department stores, and I know that area like the back of my hand. I really, really do. So I and by the way, I got into Belk within the first year and a half of being in business, which is a feat in itself. I'm very well aware of that, very appreciative and excited. But I spent the first year of my brand kind of understanding my customer, like who is the Klassic Kloth purchaser? Like, what is it that you like? What is it that you need? What is your lifestyle? And once I spent that year and I was on the Tamron Hall show, which really like validated everything, and it brought in so much business left and right. Like, I mean, like I was like, oh my God, am I gonna have to hire help? Yes. I was very excited. But when I got to that point, I had no celebrity wearing anything. I had not one editorial written about me. I had nothing, just direct to consumer sales. And I used that Tamron Hall experience, that reel, so to speak, plus showing my product and then pitching to Belk like, hey, I'm not just a regular mom and pop store. Like, I'm somebody that has years of experience. So I speak this language. And in my pitch to them, I broke down, like, I understand how to put EDIs UCC 128 labels. I was getting very technical. And then I think that kind of was like because one of the hardest things I think is when you, let's say, own a lip gloss line and you've been making these lip glosses as the kitchen beautician at home, but now you got to mass manufacture. And that is a whole different step. And it can be it is very expensive because you have to put all of the money up front. You get paid after the item is delivered, and it's anywhere from 30 to 120 days after it's delivered. So that means you have to have enough capital in order to produce all of this stuff. There's factory audits. There are a lot of additional costs that are associated with it. And the fact that I presented myself as knowing how to do that, how to have all the finances in order, and then of course they like the product, that's when they're like, okay, come on in, let's see what you got. And I had one email with all of the zhuzh that I just gave, and then I had one pitch, and they were like, so how soon can you get to Charlotte? And I was like, oh, okay.
It's a 3-hour drive. What time?
No, I was in Miami. Miami.
So that's a 1-hour flight. What time do you close?
Well, I was like, oh, I didn't even have any samples. Like, here I am pitching this whole thing. I'm like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. No samples, nothing. So I was like, okay, so give me a minute. And, I got my samples. I had samples, but not for fall. They wanted me to create a collection for fall. So this was kind of like a preliminary thing. This was back in January of 2022. I'm sorry, what year are we? 2023. January of 2023. And so I brought the samples that I did have and then wound up creating the line. But for people at home who are wanting to get to this level, it's hard. It is really hard because you need to either have really great business credit in order to follow through with this, or you need to have a lot of cash on hand to play this game, because retail is not for the faint of heart and it's not cheap.
No.
So if you have $100,000 PO, like they're writing $100,000, let's say you want to do like a 60% profit, you got to have $40,000 cash because your manufacturer needs their money. Unless you have a prior arrangement with them, then, that works. When I was at Halston, the CEO, he was the previous CEO at BCBG. So he has, accolades out the window. People trust him. They believe him. So when we worked at Halston doing these 9 private labels, we worked off of a letter of credit. So that means the factory fronted every dollar. And we had a $42 million purchase order for the whole year. So they fronted every dollar of that, which is probably about $15 million out of their pocket.
Wow. They
fronted every penny of that until the items were delivered, and then we paid them. I don't have that rapport.
I don't think a lot of people do.
So the question is like, where is the money? And so like people at home that are wanting to do this, you got to know that you have your business financing in check. There are also other options, like you can use purchase order financing, which normally purchase order financing, they want you to have $500,000 PO, which is insane. Like if
you had that, you would need them. Yeah. Funny. Kind of like if you had 5 years of experience, you wouldn't need an entry-level job.
Okay.
But again, these games are rigged against us because cousin, what's his name? Obviously, we'll have all of that. Now, I also saw from researching you that you've also had some issues with people who love your brand so much, they just want to copy it and do their own versions. How do you go about stopping that? Like,
you can't. You can't. There's no such thing as design integrity, unfortunately. I will say this, though. Black people will come for you. They'll be like, no, this person did that first. Do you remember when a brand named Hanifa? Yes, Hanifa did like the first virtual model-less fashion show. It was September of 2020, somewhere around that time.
It was New York Fashion Week. I remember because they had everything like come out just like, before AI was shut down.
And I want to say it was, I don't know who the brand was, the luxury brand that actually did do that show. And WWD, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, everybody was going on and on about how they were the first ones to do this. It's amazing. And Black Twitter came to the defense and they said, no, they were not. She was. And that actually was really great for her business because people who had never heard of her before, especially the ones at the Vogue and the Harper's Bazaar, were like, oh, we misspoke. We're sorry. And it was so beautiful to see the troops rally behind her and be like, So in the world of stealing designs, there are so many people out there on Twitter and TikTok that when they see your stuff and they see somebody else copying it, they come to your defense. They are
Oh,
your
that's
unofficial
fantastic.
official attorneys. But legally speaking,
Yeah.
um, you cannot copyright shapes. You can only copyright prints. For example, the T-shirt. Who, if I make a T-shirt and you make a T-shirt, I'm gonna sue you because you made a T-shirt. Who made the T-shirt first?
Right.
Like
Right.
that's, we got to go back to like way, way back. Who, we have no proprietary rights over that T-shirt. None of us do. But if I put a graphic of a mouse on my T-shirt and you put one as a mouse on your T-shirt and they're both the same color, then I can go after you because you've now copied
Mm.
my actual artwork. But the T-shirt itself, I can't sue you.
Sheesh.
That's
So
why
another
Shannon gets
sign to,
away with that stuff.
yeah. So another reason not to support some of those fast fashion brands that like to
Well,
copy.
I can tell you they're now, because they have been sued so many times, what they're doing now is collaborations with designers. So Shein
Sure.
is reaching out to a designer and they're saying, hey, they design all the stuff. They're white label, private labeling it, of course, with your creative direction. And they're letting you know that it's going to be a lesser scale. It's going to be different material. You sign off on everything and then you get a percentage of the sales. So
That
they're
makes,
trying to join them instead of beat them.
because I was, so when Naomi Campbell came out with Pretty Young Things, I was like, wait, that seems like that seemed opposite of her
That's a
brand
check.
and so on. But at the
That's a
same time, I
check.
was like,
She doesn't have a
finally
brand.
affordable. You're
She
true.
doesn't have a brand.
Well, I mean, in the sense of her being herself being the brand, in the sense of like
Exactly.
supermodel level, unattainable beauty.
It is a big, imagine to get somebody like a Naomi Campbell to do
Yes.
that. What was that check like?
It must have been life altering for her
Right.
and her family
And that's
because
the reason why she
I
said,
didn't even know that brand existed before Naomi. And now they're doing tours all across the state. And I'm like, wait, they're coming to Central? Let me go. And UNC as well, I think. I mean, maybe they've already
well, you
passed
know
it.
that
So,
Pretty
but,
Little Things is a UK based company. So she's
mm,
a UK girly. So
that
for
makes sense.
her, it's like their version of H&M, like a more fashionable version of H&M. But I can tell you this, the industry has changed so much. Halston, I always bring up everything at Halston because for me, that was such a pivotal part of my career. I don't think I would be as successful as I am or have the knowledge that I do without having those 5 years there. It
And
just taught
Halston
me
is
everything.
like known for being like they were the ones behind Versailles 73. Like they did a
Mhm.
lot of great things where they were really giving people that look like us
Glam. Yes.
opportunities. And I watched that movie a million times. It was a little, some
Okay.
parts were a little bit TMI, but I don't
Yeah.
care. I needed to know everything about fashion. So it's funny that you worked there because that was not in the Google or Schmoogler when I was looking you up.
Oh, yeah. No, I
So
don't think so.
when you said that, my eyes probably got really big, like, oh my gosh, there's a connection to Halston. Because I still remember on my mom's bedroom, in her
The
bathroom,
Halston
having the
bottle.
Halston bottle with the,
Elsa Peretti
yeah.
designed the bottle. Yeah, that was a.
Mm.
So what I was going to say about
Right.
Halston is, unfortunately, he has some type of bad juju on his company because everybody who acquires it at some point, it goes, they file bankruptcy, no matter what work they put into. It's really sad.
It is.
But one, like the, aside from him being a partier and throwing money left and right, like, you know, he was the diva. One of the things that took a drastic turn for the worse is that he was selling to Bergdorf Goodman. And anybody who knows anything about the fashion world, there's one Bergdorf. There's not five, there's not 5,000, there's one in New York on 57th. That's it. And when you sell to that location, you are a pinnacle brand. You're letting somebody know that I am of the elite. But then he wound up doing a partnership with J.C. Penney. And he took the same caftan, beautiful gowns that he's selling for $3,000. Now, mind you, this is like the 80s. A $3,000 gown in the 80s. And now I'm going to make one for J.C. Penney and sell it for $150. The women who were buying the $3,000 gown were insulted. They're like, whoa, wait a minute. Because what he didn't do was change the material, change the style. He kept it exactly the same. So it said Halston on it. This says Halston. Why am I buying the expensive one? And what that did at that time was deteriorate his brand. That is what caused him at the time to go bankrupt because
Mm.
people's mindset didn't understand that this was mass market and this was luxury. Also, this was the first time anybody had ever done anything like that. So he also, as a designer, didn't think, okay, well, because I'm offering this for a lesser brand, I need to change the material. I need to label it H by Halston. He just left it Halston. He
Mm.
didn't have a separation between the two. And that caused him a lot of financial anguish. But you fast forward to today's time, and every major brand is trying to jump on that train with Target. You got people like Naomi Campbell who want to do something with Pretty Little Things. So it seems like it's above you, but the numbers are there. And it's somebody like Halston who had to take that beating for other people to join on. I remember when Philip Lim did a collaboration with Target for his bags, they sold out within minutes. So it's very interesting how the industry has changed from being so prestigious in certain areas to now everybody jumping on the train because they know the money is there and they're just trying to get a buck. So shout out to Naomi, girl, get that check. I still think you're a queen.
Always.
Always. Always.
Bow down to her. It is still September, so it's still, as far as I'm concerned, it's Fashion Month.
It's Naomi month.
It's been New
Naomi
York
month.
Fashion Week, Milan Fashion Week. I think this week is Paris Fashion Week or London.
Well, London Fashion Week. It's New York, London, Milan, Paris.
Yes, so it's Paris this week. All I know is I've been waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, scrolling through to see what was the latest, who's the newest, so what has been for you? What do you think this month, as far as it being the fashion week of or the fashion month of the year, what do you think is going to be the latest trends coming forward? What are you looking forward to changing for spring? I'm thinking of spring because fall is already here. Winter's already past us. What are you thinking for spring?
So I have already designed all of my spring 2024 items. I am moving on to fall of 2024.
Well, so we already know what you're doing. So yes, what is your color for spring you're thinking?
So colors for spring. So this is my design process.
Okay.
I wait until all of the shows are done. Come October 1st, I literally sit down and I watch every runway show. I go top to bottom. Mainly the Paris and London is what I focus on. And I sit there and I watch every single show and I take notes. I don't like to really scroll the internet because I'm getting opinions and I don't want to hear about other people's opinions. I need to just see the show and get my own thing. And while you're watching the show, you watch show 1, you watch show 2, you watch show 3 and 4, and you start seeing the similarities between the colors. You say, okay, so this is the pop color of the season. These are the pop pieces, the trending pieces. This is what boots are going to look like, what shoes are going to look like, yada, yada. So I don't watch it in real time. I really pay attention to it after the fact. That way I can do a full study moment. But I can tell you that for spring, red is going to be really big. Like it's called fiery red. Red is going to be big. Brown is going to be big, as in like a tobacco-ish color, and pops of teal and mustard.
That does not mean khaki because I live in the world of khaki. So she said brown. That doesn't mean more khaki, more cargo, please.
No. Brown, tobacco brown is like a very rich.
Oh, North Carolina
has a red tone to it, like a red. Yeah,
they know their tobacco down here.
Well, dry tobacco is a different color than wet tobacco.
Oh, true.
Yeah, one is like a reddy color and the other one is like a muddy color.
Oh, see, I don't know. I learned something new today. Thank you, country girl. No, I'm kidding.
I do know my colors. I know measurements and colors.
I mean, those are two things to definitely know if you're in the design world, especially fashion design, is knowing this.
Especially if you're actually designing things, not wholesaling, because there is a difference. And I really want people to understand that going on Alibaba and purchasing something and putting your label in it is not what I am doing. It's not. It is not the same thing. When people are like, oh, that's cute. And I'm like, no, it's not cute. What I'm doing takes a lot of time. My entire clock is reversed. I work off of not only a Chinese clock, but I also work off of a Portugal clock because I have factories in both locations. So I'm dealing with people that are 6 hours ahead of me. And then I'm also dealing with people who are 12 hours ahead of me. So I'm working all day long, constantly. I'm sitting there and I'm doing full measurements. I'm making foam models of things. I'm making flat patterns. I'm doing Pantone dips. There's a lot of work. It's not the same. It is not the same thing as private labeling, which there is no shame in that. If that is your business model, if your business model is to buy things that are pre-made and then sell it, knock yourself out, make your coins. I'm not here to tell you otherwise, but I am going to say that they are two separate things. The business models are very different. And I feel like you kind of get lost in the sauce. Like when I say that I have my items in department stores, people are like, oh, that's nice. And I'm like, no, you seem to think that like I just picked up a whole bunch of shit. Sorry. Picked up a whole bunch of stuff and just dropped it off at a department store. Like this took, I told you I started this in January. We are now in September. It took months for that to get out. We're not the same, okay? I'm not Alibaba.
Yeah. No, but I'm glad you brought that up, because even like on TikTok, there was they were showing how you could reverse purchase. I guess it was Skims or something. They were showing the SKU for that you could buy the same SKU from the same manufacturer and buy it yourself and be able to resell it. And I'm glad you're bringing that up. Like that's not the same thing.
So
as
you can
creating
find
your
that out on the RN number. And the inside of your clothes, I don't know if I have one here. On the inside of your clothes, there's a I normally cut out a lot of my tags, so I may not have one. Because I hate when like the ones from Zara that are like 87 pages long.
Ooh, mine has an RN number.
Okay, so there's services that you can Google the RN number and it'll actually tell you the manufacturer that created that piece. So you can reach out to the manufacturer and then take it from there. I just gave you guys some info.
Some free game. You too can have this very same, very boxy,
and I do that
ill-fitting UGG sweatshirt.
If I go somewhere and these joggers that I'm wearing, joggers, fall, winter, 2023 joggers. If anybody knows Sheree Whitfield, joggers. I love these joggers and the material and everything about it. And so I looked at the label. I got these at Target. And I look at the label and I was like, oh, I have to, do my research to find out who the manufacturer is. Well, there's certain brands that can have things coveted and locked and keyed and this, that, and the other. And of course, Target's one of those. I was like, really wanted these pants. I wanted to change these, but I wouldn't use the same factory that a big brand like that uses anyway, because they are notorious for stealing your designs. So stay away.
Huh. So, I mean, completely different animal, but I always wonder about this with Costco.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll see, like, they'll have these brands that come in and then all of a sudden they disappear, and then there'll be the Kirkland's version of the brand. Not saying that Costco does that, but in the same, I wonder with these different designers, when they get into these different collaborations, what's to stop that company from kind of, like you just said, like there's no patents that you guys can put on your designs or so on. So what's to keep them from remaking what you gave them?
When you enter a product into their space, they now have proprietary ownership of whatever is here. It belongs to me. It's mine. And if I feel the need that I want to make something that look like that, then I will. But you also don't know what the negotiations could have been. They might actually now have said, no, we loved that item, but we want you to now private label it as the Kirkland brand. You know how many people, Kirkland brand isn't just one office. They could reach out to me and say, hey, can you make a line of luggage under the Kirkland brand, but Klassic Kloth is actually designing it. And of course you can actually look on those labels and it'll tell you distributed by, designed by. It might say Kirkland LLC, but designed by Klassic Kloth.
Well, so that's another reason to read the labels, to watch the movie to the end, to see who creates the stuff you're watching and doing and caring about. Because you don't really know how many, like there isn't, I guess, the long list that there is at the end of movies to let you know who made your garments, where they came from. And so thank you for even just that little RN number, because I will be Googling the heck out of my products now to make sure I am supporting brands that are, doing the right thing, so to speak. Because I there's so much to keep up with, whether what you're putting in your body, on your body, it all matters in the greater sense of keeping Mother Earth here for us living off of and taking from. So on that note, to make sure everyone knows how they can reach you and how they can find your fashions, will you share how everyone can keep up with you, get in contact with you, or if somebody wants to come work for you, how they can do it? So she got a budget, y'all. No, I'm kidding.
I'm balling. I have no budget.
She's got a budget.
No, I am Jewish. So there's always a budget. All right, down to the penny. Don't play. But you can.
She said it, not me. Look, I love Jewish people. There's no anti-Semitism over here. She made the stereotype joke.
No, I'm speaking for me. Okay. But you can follow.
Yeah, gotta watch that because we're in Mark Robinson's territory, possibly. So just to put that up. He's the lieutenant governor that's anti-Semitic that's running for governor in North Carolina.
Yeah, I don't live here, so I don't know.
I mean, I wish you voted here at least.
I
'Cause
don't.
you cannot vote. Well,
I
tell your
don't.
family members to make sure they don't vote for him because
Right. We're
he's
gonna
not the
stay in
one.
New York where we belong, or Florida, where it's safe.
Ah, I wish I could leave. I, I mean, I
But
love our house, but I do hate it here. It's just
oh
definitely
no,
where dreams go to die. So, yeah. But I love
well,
my
there's
family.
always
Thanks for making
fashion.
me
Fashion can relive all of your dreams.
true, and I'm lucky. I do have an agent here. I mean, granted, I don't do a lot of fashion work, but they do a lot of fashion with Wrangler and so on. But I get to do furniture because I'm furniture size. I make furniture look bigger. So
Yeah.
I'm the furniture size model. I'm not 5'10". I'm 5'6".
I'm a giant, so I look like the fun house where it's like, oh, hi down there.
At least you can make your own sample sizes. And be like,
Well, you know
this is a sample
what?
size.
Fun
Yeah.
fact before we go,
Yeah.
sample size is for clothing. Normally, it used to be a 00. Now it's like a size 2-4, so I can fit that. But shoe sample
7.
size is a size 6.
Oh, it's 6.
It is a size 6 because you have to scale from the smallest up. You don't scale from the top down. And it's called grading when you're scaling. And so every time at Halston, I'd be like, man, I really think we're going to have to get a size 10 because I got to test it out. I'm only going to know the proper fit if I wear it. And they would come up to me, they'd be like, why are there all these sample charges? And I was like, I don't know.
So what I'm hearing is that we wear the same shoe size. So, and you believe in sustainable fashion. So as you outgrow things, holla at your girl. I'll come pick them up.
Listen, let me tell you, I love vintage everything, but the one thing I will not do, and this is as a footwear expert, is buy a pair of used shoes. The amount of bacteria.
That part.
But anyway, if you want to contact me.
So in the bowling alley, when they're spraying, they're doing nothing but just spraying into their face is what I've noticed.
They are literally like incubating the bacteria. Because think about it, it's leather. Bowling shoes are made out of leather, and you're wetting leather. That is a breeding ground for why do bowling shoes smell the way that they do?
I mean, literally, it hits you when you walk in. That's why I don't bowl, but also because my hands are really big and I don't have the strength to handle all that hand. So they get stuck in the holes and it hurts really bad if you made a mistake more than once. So yeah,
I can only bowl if my nails are cut down really short, and that's never. So unfortunately, I won't be bowling.
Sorry, it's a hate crime.
Sorry.
It's your nails. But no, real talk. Where can people find you? Because they're gonna want to connect with you, and I'm gonna have like visuals of all your beautiful fashions throughout the show as well. And so they're gonna be like, "Oh my God."
You can, of course, go to belk.com and find Klassic Kloth, or you can shop on my site directly, which is classickloth.co. You can find me on the Instagrizzle on Klassic Kloth. You can also find my personal page, Karrica, if you want to, but and then TikTok. I'm a TikToker. I love a TikTok. Okay, listen, I have to say this before we go.
Yeah, sure.
I think TikTok is such a wonderful platform for multiple reasons. There was a young lady that I just happened to scroll through on a live one day, and she was in a car accident and she's burned like 80% of her body. So she has no hands and no legs. TikTok is a way for her to generate income that she never would be able to get on disability. And from building this community, she's now launched a product. She's making lip glosses now because she found something therapeutic in the community of makeup because she's got all these burns. And so doing makeup with no hands has been like a therapy for her. And I remember in her live, she spoke about how the disability check that she gets is not enough to cover anything because now her whole life has changed. She needs special chairs. She needs a ramp. She needs special showers because she doesn't have legs. She hasn't learned to use her prosthetics yet. She needs a special vehicle, like all of these specialized things that $1,800 a month in disability just is not going to cover. And not getting in her personal business, but a lawsuit hasn't been settled. So how is she going to generate income? What job is she going to be able to do? So being on TikTok, building this community and now generating income from that, to me is so wonderful because there are so many people out there that are just like that young lady that would never be able to really function in everyday society. And now they're getting an opportunity to do something creatively, which I think also helps you with your mental. You're getting a space to speak to people that you never would speak to. You're getting a space to now have a community to support you that you wouldn't have had previously. And so to me, TikTok is beautiful. And then also, based off of your algorithms, you can learn a lot. TikTok is the #1 search engine over Google. So I, as a business owner, go to TikTok for a lot of things. I will Google how to ship. If I want to sell to Costco, I'll say, shipping my products to Costco, and all of these videos will come up with people that are like, don't ship to Costco. Somebody else will say, ship to Costco. Somebody will say, oh, well, this is what happened to me. So it's a learning experience as well. So it's building a community, it's learning. It is also stupid dances and people doing things just to get views, but there's a learning aspect and there is a beauty in a community of people, especially for somebody's mental health, to just know that you're not alone in this world. So I am a Todd. They should write me a
I'm
text.
glad you shared that story because you got to drop her username, and if you don't know it off the top of your head, I can add it later. You do?
Yes. It's raw tea. I'm gonna have to give it to you.
Okay, that's fine. No pressure. Yes. But needless to say, like, I want to be able to follow her, but I think I'm so glad you brought that up because a lot of times when I'm thinking about TikTok, I'm thinking about, funny videos and jokes and stuff. So thanks for bringing that up because
TikTok should write me a check. That was deep.
Wait, say that again?
I said TikTok should write me a check. That was really deep.
I mean, seriously, change the whole concept of what TikTok can be, and maybe it shouldn't be banned in all of the different countries and states because it has so many positive sides to it. That hasn't been completely exacerbated yet. But again, everybody can reach you at Klassic Kloth, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, or IG, Facebook, all the things. What are they all? I'm not. X, oh, you do still do X?
I do X.
Oh, okay. See, I made her say it.
Use X. It's Twitter. You're Twitter. Okay? You're Twitter.
No, I'm like, back in my day when you said you used X, it meant something completely different. But y'all go off, kids. Tell on yourselves if you want to. Just kidding. Old school humor. So anywho, thank you so much for being my guest today. I learned a ton of stuff, and I hope all of our viewers did as well. And make sure you watch and follow her rise because it's just going up higher and higher until she's at a point where she doesn't have to introduce herself to anyone.
Okay,
everybody will know who Karrica is. All right. Well, make sure you tune again next week. I will have another amazing guest. I can't wait for you to meet her or he. I don't really remember on the top of my head which one is next week, but you're going to enjoy it because it takes a lot of work to find these guests. And I really appreciate you guys tuning in and watching them. Thanks again for tuning into the E-Spot. And you can reach more about me at CamilleCoward.com.
Bye.